Hi everyone, welcome back to Other Realms of Reality. And this is part 3, where I'm going to talk about timelines and other dimensions. Have any of you ever experienced a different reality to someone else in the same moment? Or maybe been in a different dimension? And what do I mean by that? Well, I will go a bit more in depth into my own experience. I've had a few of these. But this one stands out a little bit more than the others, mainly because it was early evening, I was very much awake, and the others kind of happened when I was waking up or I was lying there kind of in a bit more of a lucid state. Before I go into that particular experience, I just want to briefly cover about timelines and other dimensions, just for those that maybe haven't come across this concept before. And I'm not an expert on this, but this is my own sort of perception of what they are. My understanding of timelines, which are often referred by mediums, psychics, and many others, as being something that we create ourselves. So, say for example, if you were to have a reading with a psychic or a medium and they were to give you some information about what is likely to occur, I believe that what they're actually seeing is the most likely timeline that you are on the trajectory of in that moment. But where things can change is where, say, for example, you have two choices, one or two, and you choose two instead of one, which means the timeline can change. So that would explain partly why sometimes when you go for a reading, that some things aren't quite as were predicted, and you may question the validity of that medium, but actually in hindsight, it might just be that you've taken a different path. But generally, overall, timelines are fairly predictive if you are following a set pattern that's laid out for you. But yes, I do believe we still have free will to deviate from that path. So, in essence, a timeline can be running parallel to you. In fact, there can be many timelines that still maybe get to the same result or maybe a different result. But there are lots of different versions, and we can jump from timeline to timeline. So that's just to give you an overview of my perception of that. Okay, so what is a dimension? Well, my understanding of dimensions are about frequency and energy. So if we look at everything on the earth, in the universe, having a frequency, even down to a rock, an atom, a human, an animal, even a piece of furniture has a level of frequency, but they also have a level of vibration. So I believe a dimension is a level of vibration and frequency. So you can have several dimensions within one space where beings are co-inhabiting and existing in that same space, but they may not be able to always see or experience the other, particularly if they are of a higher vibrational frequency and depending on the dimension. I will just give you a very brief example of this. If you look at a psychic medium, they are in essence tapping into another dimension to connect with that person's loved one or even with their own guides. And also, if you were to meditate and quieten the mind, what you're in essence doing is you're raising your frequency and vibration. We also do this through laughter, joy, love. They are all ways to tap into that higher frequency and higher dimensional realities. And finally, just so there's no confusion on this, because there's a lot of terminology around dimensions and densities, and they're both quite similar, but the dimension you could say is the container or setting, whereas density is an evolutionary shift. So when people referred to we are going from the third density to the fifth density, what they mean is that evolutionary shift in consciousness. And for those that are interested, the fourth density apparently refers to the in-between stage, which is often where ghosts actually reside. But the fifth density is a much higher frequency. And apparently we are going through, well, I do believe this, we are going through this evolutionary shift right now where we're going up into fifth density. And this is why things are so chaotic at the moment. But I'm happy to share more on that if anybody would like me to. Just say in the comments and I can always just do another video. Now, just to give you an example of this with my own personal experience, this was a good few years ago, which was around 2021. It was around early evening time, I'd say probably around 6:30, 7ish, something like that. And this was in Devon in England. And what happened was my lovely cat decided to bring a small rabbit in the house, which she often brings in little presents, but this one was alive. And I was actually in the other room at the time. My partner was in the lounge and I just heard him shriek. So naturally I went into the lounge to see what was going on. As I went into the lounge, I saw my cat dart out of the front room into the kitchen and out the cat flap as my partner tried to rescue the rabbit. I went after her to make sure she was okay, and my partner asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm going to see if the cat's okay. And he proceeded to tell me that the cat was in the hallway because he'd locked her in the hallway out the way. And I said to him, but I saw her go through the kitchen and out the cat flap. And I was absolutely adamant that that was what I saw, and I still am to this day. He was insistent that he was right, and he actually pulled me towards the hallway to show me that the cat was actually in the hallway. Naturally, I didn't believe him until I actually saw her looking up at me in the hallway. I still kind of find this quite fascinating how this works. I was very much with it, very much awake, and I was clearly seeing another timeline, or was it another dimension? I'll let you kind of work that one out. This is a really good example of how in our everyday we can perceive and see something completely different to what someone else sees it. So maybe we are just tapping into another timeline or dimension. It's certainly good food for thought, really. Just briefly, I've had this one a couple of times, just as another brief example, was when I was waking up in the morning and I'm just lying there. And again, I'm aware that I'm awake. I'm not in a lucid state in this particular experience. And I'd see my partner literally jump out of bed and rush to the toilet. And just as I was laying there thinking, well, he doesn't normally run to the toilet, I'd look back and he would be lying there, still asleep in the bed. These are kind of different examples of how it can play out. Now, obviously, naturally, it's always good to rule out everything first where possible. But when there is no other explanation and there is no other contributing factor, you are left with a question that you don't have the answer to. The first thing that would come to your mind is, oh, I just imagined that, or, it was a one-off, so you shrug it off. But when it's actually really, really obvious to you and quite profound, a bit like my first experience I mentioned, I think it's time to sort of look at it a bit more objectively and not just dismiss it. Now, some of you may have heard of the Mandela effect. If not, then I highly recommend you look into it because it really is quite a fascinating one. And there are a couple of examples of that I can relate to as well, my memories from childhood and how a certain thing in a film has been changed recently, and yet there's no record of it when you look back online. And you will find that it's often a concept that's shared by many, many people, not just yourself or a few. There are so many fascinating topics like this out there that, we could kind of try and figure out, but we only have what limited information we have in this moment to be able to fully understand it. Now, with this one, it's very hard really to say kind of what tools and techniques that, would be helpful really, because apart from doing the obvious discernment, ruling out things that are obvious that might be the cause, if you are left like me where you don't have any answers to it, apart from what I suggest as a timeline or another dimension, yes, it might come outside of your belief system, but remember, beliefs are only created while we're in this body and they don't necessarily last forever. A belief is a moment in time, and beliefs can change because we only have as much information in one moment. So, how could we possibly know the bigger picture? So, really, my advice would be that if you are concerned about what you experience, is to seek out other people that have had similar experiences and try and gain your own understanding, and just know that you're not the only one. There are many people that are experiencing something similar. So I hope this has been helpful, everyone. I'd be interested to know if anybody else has had any similar experiences. And if you're willing to share, or if you'd like to put them in the comments so other people can see them, that would be absolutely wonderful. But if not, that's fine too. And I will see you very, very soon for another experience. Take care, everyone. Bye.